Greetings everyone! Today we're going to report about our case study 2A of Papua New Guinea, or in short, PNG. Yay! So this is us. So the primary question we want to answer is, what should PNG adhere to? Should it be non-interference and consensus building, or flexible engagement? Through research and discussion, the group decided to make our answer in line with what Sir has mentioned during our last conference call, which is, we'll be providing specific actions to specific domestic issues in PNG. And how we'll evaluate those choices is through those basis of judgment that we've come up with. From this, we can take it that non-interference and consensus building will be chosen if and only if we see that PNG is consistently handling the internal issues with literal solutions or actions. But if not, and we see that there are no progress whatsoever to counter these problems, then flexible engagement will be our choice of implementation, just like that. Now, we're first going to tackle the areas we assess that are in need of supranational engagement, which are the following: women's rights, children's rights, police brutality, disability rights, and lastly, sexual orientation and gender identity. As of the moment,
the most serious human rights issue is the domestic violence of women and children.
There were cases within tribes. For example,
in July, ambushes and murders happened in Minima villages, causing 6 people being killed, and days later in Hela province, 8 women and 5 children were massacred. Prime Minister James Marape condemned the killings, ruling death penalty against perpetrators, but no one has yet to be arrested. Weak enforcement of laws criminalizing violence against women and children continued to foster a culture of impunity and lawlessness in Papua New Guinea.
Okay, so just to mention, we'll be emphasizing more on women's rights rather than the others, since it's the topmost grave problem in PNG. It is said that
2/3 of women in Papua New Guinea are being affected by domestic violence. Last March 2019, more than 200 domestic violence and sexual violence cases were reported, and over 23 murders because of domestic violence alone.
And then there were surveys that showed that in women, 55% experienced forced sex, whereas in men, 14.1 committed multiple preparatory rape, and 60% participated in gang rape. There are also traditions in PNG that greatly discriminates women, such as customary bride price. It is the practice wherein women are used as compensation to settle disputes between tribes or clans. Because of this, men carry out the mentality that they can do anything with the women just because they paid for them. And also, because of this custom, a polygyny relationship became prevalent. It is where men can have several wives. The last issue is witch hunt. It's the most disturbing culture that PNG has. It is the belief in witches and sorcery. It's a very widespread notion that women are the ones who are most likely to use magic. That's why those who are accused of being a witch are killed and tortured brutally. One way or another, the government did do quite a few things to alleviate the problem. In 2009, they made a committee that reviews sorcery-related laws. Then, the creation of the Family Protection Act in 2013, where it criminalizes domestic violence. By 2017, they funded a sorcery awareness and educational program. And also, finally, they made rape punishable by law. In addition, they have 17 family and sexual violence units in the police and 5 shelters for abused women in Port Moresby. Pero ayun nga, yes, they might have done this and that. Though the bottom line is that there are more failures than successes. This is proven through the list shown in the slide. 1. Abortion is still illegal, leaving pregnant raped women with no choice. I cannot believe it, but sexual harassment is still legal. 3. The government tried to impose a death penalty on serious cases, but from 1954 till now, there had been no signs of an execution. 4. Family Protection Act is of no use. 5. Legal systems prefer compensation rather than trials for rapists. Other than the mentioned faults, the reason why we're so dead set in making PNG's women's rights have a flexible conversation amongst ASEAN countries is because it has already been receiving support from the organizations shown on the screen. UN Women have already worked with the PNG government to provide women-only buses to stop sexual harassment. Whereas Committee on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women have urged PNG to modify discriminating customary practices. United Nations Development Program have collaborated with UN Gender Task Team to create a policy on gender equality and women empowerment in PNG.
On children's rights, it is flexible engagement. Police often beat children in lockups and house them with adults. There is an extremely high level of violence against children, including sexual violence and violent discipline.
Up to 75% of children in 30 selected communities of Papua New Guinea have experienced violence in their own homes.
Weak enforcement mechanisms and insufficient child protection services contributed to the impunity of such violence. Due to this weak enforcement, external interventions may further help regarding lessening the issue. In addition, there have already been external interventions regarding the child abuse matter in PNG. World Vision campaigner Mercy Jumo told SBS News the findings highlighted the need for better targeted aid funding from Australia. Child Fund Australia has also been looking into and is in the works for helping Papua New Guinea's child and women abuse issue.
Police brutality also needs flexible engagement, most especially because of the following concerns. Up to the present, there are over 8,000 cases of police abuse, and from 2014, 326 out of 1,000 were classified as criminal cases. During the police shootout in 2016 and prison killings in 2017, no officer was held responsible and no investigations happened. When all of this news were made publicly, PNG's police department finally started making their moves. Jelto Wong addressed the 37 arrests made in 2019 by the Policing the Police Task Force, directed by David Manning and headed by Terry Apollo. Yes, there's little changes happening. It's still not enough an impact for the country because the events are only unfolding within Port Moresby. The biggest external help came from the Human Rights Watch and their annual reports.
On disability rights, organizations aimed to helping disabled people are still basic and not yet strong. These organizations may be enriched by external interventions if flexible engagement is considered. Countries like Singapore, who take seriously disability rights, may be able to help enrich Papua New Guinea's disabled people organizations. For sexual orientation and gender identity, it is flexible engagement. The Papua New Guinea Criminal Code outlaws sex against the order of nature, which has been interpreted to apply to consensual same-sex acts, and is punishable by up to 14 years imprisonment. From a moral standpoint and pertaining to the human rights aim, the punishment of 14 years is not justifiable. Not to mention, the issues regarding the abuse of gay asylum seekers being harassed and abused are not delved into by the state.
Watch this film if you want to know more about gender identity rights in PNG.
On corruption, we chose non-interference and consensus building. To further articulate based on past events, Papua New Guinea's government has never taken too kindly foreign interference in their politics. Former Prime Minister Morauta accused Mr. Turnbull, an Australian man, of interfering in domestic politics. Similarly, Mr. Davis, also from Australia, was deported for having become involved in Papua New Guinea politics. With this in mind, having flexible engagement is not feasible in relational terms, knowing that Papua New Guinea does not tolerate foreign interference. So, to answer the question why your preference should be adopted, first, the policy of non-interference aims at preventing the aggravation of domestic conflicts by foreign factors. With this in mind, interfering with the affairs of the government's welfare and way of running the system would not be desirable. That is, intervening in the matter of corruption is taboo, as it goes against the ASEAN way. Therefore, non-interference and consensus building is best in terms of corruption or main governmental handling system.
But in terms of other human affairs, just like the case in PNG,
flexible engagement is feasible as it helps enforce and better
countries' welfare. In conclusion, we recommend other countries to follow our lead if, and only if, they also use our basis of judgment as an evaluation to their choices.
As of July 2020, there had been 17 confirmed cases and 1 death in Papua New Guinea. One particular news in line with how PNG responded to this pandemic is their emergency health bill that is now an act where several reactions from other officials sprung out due to the act's purpose. It was said that the bill was passed on so fast that others weren't able to fully read it. An article from Henry Ivaricher said that the act is more focused on the security, regulation, and population rather than their medical needs. An opposition such as Governor Alan Bird was not in favor of this because it is already reducing the rights of the people, from police brutality while under lockdown to domestic abuse, which was pointed out by the UNICEF, saying that it had been more prevalent during this pandemic. Another opposition, Dr. Alan Marat, said that the government is focusing so narrow on the situation that the help they do is mostly limited for the people in Port Moresby. So based on our research, PNG's response on the COVID-19 is not that all successful, but several suggestions and help from other countries were given to them in order to be better. To continue, Henry Ivaricher suggested that the government should focus more on their needs medically since they are lacking a lot of it, and he said that it would have been better if they put more funding on the betterment of their health department so they could have come prepared. Governor Alan Bird suggested that the government should do more research about the data of their cases in PNG rather than relying on other countries' data. We can learn that it will always be better to know our priorities and make sure that we should focus on what we really need at the moment rather than what the government needs. And just like PNG, we should also have a call center regarding COVID-19 and a response team that could be sent off anytime in order to take swab tests.